Next question right now goes to Rudy Darden with the Valencia College Peace and Justice Institute. Comes from News 96.5. Joe Kelly, a partner of ours who has been talking with people in our community on this issue over the radio. And Joe, can you share a question from what you are hearing from your listeners tonight?
I've seen a lot of people that have come to me both on the radio and on the streets, and my friends and everything that have brought up the notion of white privilege. And that is a hard thing to swallow for a lot of proud people, because they feel like they have achieved the level of success that they have in business and in industry and in everything else because of their own hard work. So there is certainly an insult there to some white people when they hear the term white privilege. But explain from your perspective what white privilege is, and maybe give us some examples of that.
Thanks for that question. I appreciate that. I have to talk about white privilege more than I think I would have to, given that we have a civil war that was fought over white privilege. I have to answer that question more than I thought I would have to, knowing that the Constitution, which governs so many of our thinkings and our ideas, never included me. It included white people. And so for me to have to continuously address this ideal of white privilege, it speaks to what Mayor Dyer said earlier in his conversation around being a white man and understanding that he's a white man. And there's some things that he's waking up to as he understands what it's like to be a white man. I will say this, though. When people talk about white privilege, what they're thinking is that somebody is giving them something individually which they did not earn. And when I think of white privilege, I simply think of the dehumanity that has been given to Black people for something that they did not earn. And so I think if we begin to reposition the conversation, it's what we at the Peace and Justice Institute have been striving to do in the community for a number of years, repositioning the conversation to where we can talk about the dehumanity of Black bodies. And not so much saying that white people have been given something that they didn't earn, which we know is true. You were given a constitution that afforded you certain rights to where people like me did not have to have it be amended in order for me to enjoy those rights. Anytime a person has to have an amendment put in the Constitution, that lets you know that some other group had an amendment, some other group had a privilege over another group. But if you don't like using the word white privilege, fine, let's not use it. We'll just say the continued dehumanization of Black and brown bodies.
All right, Rudy, thank you. That was excellent. Again, as we continue